So we're now standing in one of our tunnels of magnolia plants, and I've got evergreen varieties on my right and the deciduous varieties on my left, and these are all very specialized, named and grafted plants, and we've just potted them on again from 5 litre into 7.5 or 10 litre pots, and you can see that they're putting on the second set of new growth for this year. Magnolias in the right environment will grow phenomenally quickly, and you may even get a further set of new growth coming if we have a overcast and dry and dampish summer. But basically you're now looking at magnolias which are priced in around the 75–80 pound bracket. These are effectively 4 or 5 years from the original graft being undertaken. These are mature plants, most of which will have flowers, we hope, although we can never guarantee that a grafted plant will have a flower, but already we can see a few of next year's flower buds starting to appear, which is unusual this early in the summer. But one of the things that people frequently ring us up and ask us is, how do we sort out the prices, because we have some magnolias we call medium-sized plants which we price around £60, and then we have some that are priced, as I said, at £75–80 pounds. And that becomes a bit of a movable feast, but it's something we decide at the end of the growing season in maybe August and September, depending on how the plants look, depending on how they're priced. Now, there are always going to be magnolias that don't grow very large, and that is the nature of the beast. And although they may be just as old and possibly just as rare, they may not be as large, although they're still at a 65 or a medium price. And this particular variety here, it's just not a very big grower. It's never going to grow as quickly as some of these others here. So we've got a choice to make on the pricing based on size, on rarity, and on basically how big the plant actually grows and how quickly it grows. And some of the species are much smaller growing, and they're never going to achieve this sort of 6–7 foot height that we have here. In fact, there's a danger that these plants are getting almost too big. For the courier will only take about 6 foot tall plants, so we're pushing it here and may need to do a little light pruning as the summer goes on. But if we pull out at random one of the larger plants, effectively a year ago, or up until it was potted, this would have been a 60–65 pound plant. By next spring, or in next year's catalogue, that'll be a 75 or 80 pound plant, because it's had the extra year's growth and has made a much more substantive plant to plant out in the garden. It's a question that people often ask us about the pricing and the sizing, and it's impossible to be absolutely precise, but I hope that by looking at the range of different varieties and the different heights and sizes to which they grow in this tunnel, you can see firstly how healthy they all are, but secondly, some grow more quickly than others, and the pricing is proportionate to that. We do the pricing in the autumn as the leaves start to drop. It isn't always absolutely perfect, but these are very good substantive plants which, when they've been dormant in the winter and are planted out in the spring, should romp ahead in your own garden. So this is another batch of magnolias which are a year younger than the ones we just looked at that had been potted on. These are still in 3 or 5 litre pots, and you can rather more clearly see the range in sizes that different varieties grow at. And in a 3 litre pot, we'd be talking about sort of 20–25 pounds. Something that sort of size would be in the 35–45 pound range, again depending on rarity, how quickly it grows, and how many we've got in stock. So just glancing around, and I readily admit this lot could do with a weed, and they'll soon be potted on and weeded. You can see the point I'm trying to make, that it's very difficult to generalize about what the price of a magnolia is, and that's why you may find our catalogue a little bit confusing. And the point of making this video is really to show you the different sizes and heights and what they actually mean in practice. And we're now going to go on into the sales side of the nursery and look at the magnolias which we would actually be sending you if you order one from us, and you'll see that they're bigger and better again. Up to now, what we've been looking at are plants growing on in our private growing area, which are not yet ready for sale, but will be in the future. And now we'll go and look at the finished product. So we're now in the retail side of the nursery, where if you were coming to visit Burncoose, this is what you'd see in our magnolia tunnel. And as you can see, there's some pretty mature plants here. We've probably got 200 different varieties of magnolia in this one tunnel. And if we ever wander down through, you can see the range and variation in the different varieties. And for instance, here is a species of Magnolia tripetala, and that's priced at £35. It's quite rare. It's not grafted, so it's rather cheaper because it hasn't had to have all the effort put into the graft and the failure rate that goes with that. And so that's a relatively cheap but still very good magnolia. And if we at random pick out another one which is sort of a 60-65 pound size, you see in a 5-litre pot, the height isn't necessarily the determining factor, it's the age of the plant and its rarity or whatever. Nice colour labels this side. And if we move on, we can see another species, Magnolia stellata. Again, not a grafted plant, really quite common, and the price on this large plant is £40, which is pretty good value compared to the garden centre equivalent. And if that was in a 3-litre pot, it would be half that in price. But when we come on to some of the really large grafted plants in front of our explanation board here, here we've got a Magnolia Sprengeri diva in a 7.5-litre pot. Not a great deal taller perhaps than the one we just looked at, but this is at the higher £75 price. You can see the stem is thicker, you can see it's more branched, you can see it's a year older. It's about just over 6 foot tall, as was the other one, but a more substantive plant and therefore worth the extra effort and money, or so we believe. This filming's taking place in July, and the magnolia selling season's long gone. Most of these plants are sold without leaf. There'll be any leaf on them in February, March and April. This tunnel was nearly completely empty before we went into lockdown. 700 or 800 of these plants went out of the nursery into gardens all over the country, and quite a number went to Ireland. So this is the next crop for next spring. These are the plants that you would be ordering. And you can see the enormous range of varieties, species, named hybrids that there are here. It's a complicated matter pricing magnolias. We know it's confusing. What I've tried to explain is how we work out the pricing and what we feel is a realistic and fair price for the different size plants of different ages with different degrees of scarcity or rarity. And one's got to remember that some of these named hybrids, they're quite small plants still, even out in the garden. We can only get maybe 5 or 6 grafts a year off them. Therefore they're very scarce, and scarcity, I'm afraid, means expense And as ever, often the scarcest plants are the most beautiful new things and what you all want to get. And you must order early, because a lot of the new introductions disappear very fast when the spring season starts and the magnolias start to come out.